Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgia Critic, still continuing my first review at this time of the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, books, not films this time. And now I'm moving on to the fourth part of it. After those first three volumes came out in the early 1950s, or the stories themselves were, of course, the 1940s and ending in January 1950, and the volumes themselves are about 1953 or so, and then reprinted in 1960 by Doubleday. So they kind of gradually came into the consciousness of science fiction readers and the world in general. There was a big hiatus, as I indicated at some point. Isaac Asimov really much preferred writing about fact rather than writing science fiction. Fiction is what got him started in the beginning. So, but as he got older, he finally, he'd had some ideas. He'd started another Foundation book, abandoned it after a few pages, and just left it there languishing for a long, long time. Finally, there was so much pressure. I mean, it was one of those, we're going to make an offer you can't refuse kind of thing from his publisher. You got to write a Foundation book. That's just all there is to it. And so he digs out whatever little bit of a draft he'd started and takes that and adds to it tremendously. And in 1982, surprised everyone, me most of all, by coming out with Foundation's Edge. So, the fourth novel in the Foundation series. You only read the three volumes so many times, and then you've got to get to the next one. Foundation's Edge, of course. Now we're about 500 years into this whole, or 498 years it starts, into this whole interregnum period. The Foundation has gotten a whole lot larger. The second Foundation is now pretty much mostly forgotten by the first Foundation. I mean, we kind of know vaguely it was there in the background, but we don't hear much about it anymore. So the first Foundation, they've got a woman mayor named Brano, and she's found this guy who, again, is somebody with really good instincts. And this time he's not like some kind of second Foundation or a special who knows what from who knows where. He's just a guy with really good instincts. And that's exactly it. That's exactly who he is. He's somebody who can make good choices. Okay. How that should ever come to be recognized, I can't begin to imagine. But they do, and they decide this guy named Golan Trevize. I always call him Trevize throughout this whole thing instead of Golan. I don't know why. So it's Trevize. And Mayor Brano is going to give him, exile him and send him on this journey to go out into space and just see if he can find a second Foundation, because there's still, it's 498 years into the interregnum. I think Hari Seldon appears right on schedule, and things are like so much exactly on schedule. It almost begins to be like, wow, that whole thing with the mule. We could see that things would be more or less going back to normal somewhat, but that perfectly? Maybe there's a little more to all this. Maybe there's still a second Foundation out there. And Mayor Brano wants that looked into, but she's afraid to have that or talk about it. And Golan Trevize is kind of the one really making these perceptions. And she decides to exile, that's dangerous stuff, I'm exiling you. But she exiles him by putting him in this latest, greatest spaceship, super fast, super efficient, super slick, everything. There's another guy, Compor Lee or something like that, she sends to follow him. Trevize is too smart to, not notice a tracer, so you don't trace him. You have somebody follow him and put a tracer on that person's ship. So, Mayor Brano is going to just let him see if he can find the second Foundation. He goes exploring here and there and here and there looking for it. And a lot of this is just kind of his adventures looking for it. And I don't know that he actually finds it, but there's also interlaced with this, we hear a little more about the second Foundation. Again, I'm not going to talk about where it is, but we have a guy who's running for first speaker named Delarmy. I think his name was Gendabal. Delarmy is a lady who also wants to be the first speaker, but she's kind of she's a problem. But there's this guy named Gendabal, and he's vying for the role of being first speaker. He'll get it at the end of the book, by the way. And even these foundationers are kind of noticing something strange. They find this simple woman, on their planet, obviously not a part of the second foundation, which is somebody around. And they look inside her mind, and there's just some very subtle something on there that couldn't have been just from her, couldn't have been done by any second foundationer, had to have been done by somebody even more clever, or who knows what. Well, it's kind of neat how all these two different efforts kind of go exploring the galaxy and finding different things and so forth. And like I said, there's a lot more that would make sense if I could talk about where the second foundation is, but I'm not going to do that. But eventually, they find this planet called Gaia, which is, it's kind of like a meaning of Earth. And in fact, that's one of the interesting things, is they take up this little motif of looking for the planet Earth. Now, I'm going to talk about that. It's kind of a motif that's run through all of this. Obviously, in the Elijah Bailey days and Robots days, and even the Galactic Empire days, or at least stars like dust when the Empire is still expanding, it seems to be kind of known that Earth is where everybody came from, all the humans, because it's a human-only galaxy, pretty much. Now, as we get into the Foundation era, there's this little funny thing, actually in that very first Foundation book, where the representative from the Empire, pretended like he was going to promise to protect them, but he's all pretense in a show. He's talking about, well, the origin, he has to talk like, kind of weird, the origin question, he had different ideas, it could have been on here, there, but I'm interested in a copy of Namek, who has a whole new idea that it's probably over there, and all their ideas, are just these weird guesses. And, one of the guesses is Soul, which is to say the sun we have, but that's just one of many guesses, and not even one of the stronger ones, And Glean, Lamech's based largely on Glean, who had this other, theory totally in another area, and the idea being is that we think because everybody's kind of interbreedable, that maybe that means we all came from some one planet, but that's all so hideously long ago. Kind of like today, humanity, even with the different races we have, they all interbreed. We really are, one species. And so that being the case, it's reasonable to expect that we must have become humans such as we are at some identifiable time and place, maybe some part of the Earth. We didn't just kind of independently show up all around the world at the same time. There was probably some localized area where the first genetically identifiable humans would have appeared, you see. If you don't mind me bringing a little bit of evolutionary theory into all this. We're talking science fiction. Let's just, let's just run with it. I don't want to get into all that, but this is science fiction. I mean, yeah, you could talk about Adam and Eve and, the Tigris and Euphrates, and okay, could have happened there too. I'm not going to say one way or another on that, but real world here is, wouldn't it be something to have seen where it all came from, where it all started, and in this galactic age, way in the future, the first galactic empire is collapsed. It's gone now. I mean, completely gone. And the new empire is still, half a millennium in the future, according to the Selden plan. So you're definitely at the height of this interregnum period. And it's a genuine, legitimate question. Where, what planet did humans first appear on? So Treves is going to go around with this other guy named Calorat, who that's been his lifelong obsession, is to try to see, figure out, what there is, try to pick up the pieces from so terribly long ago. What do we know about where human beings might have come from in the first place, or what planet did they originate on? We're looking for something. We call it Earth, but a lot of places can call themselves Earth. And it's just something, Treves says, I want to look for Earth. That's officially what he's supposed to be doing, but unofficially for Mayor Brown, he's really looking for the second foundation. And in the course of all this, he finds, and apparently Gendabal finds the same planet too, a planet called Gaia. And it turns out Gaia is this very strange planet that it's like it's one huge organism. Everything and everyone on this planet understands and is part of everything else. It's connected with everything else and everyone else. So it's not like you have all these different people and beings and animals and plants and so forth. They're all like this one super being, you know, that still expresses itself in all these little life forms that even still devour each other like a normal, you know, food chain. And yet it's like they're kind of at peace with being eaten because they know something of themselves really will, you know, and even who they are will go on into whoever it is that's going to eat them, and they have this total peace with all this. It's all kind of this weird sort of peace and harmony. What's so strange about this Gaia world is that Isaac Asimov once wrote a short story called, well, Misbegotten Missionary, I think was the title when it was published. I think he had another title for it instead, but that's what it seems to be known as. Where there's this planet where everything's this one organism, and you can always know because they have this weird green fuzz growing out of their eyes. And this little tiny worm tries to smuggle its way on so that it can spread the one being to wherever the spaceship of humans came from, you see. And it climbs in and it takes this secret little place, and it sits there real quiet. Nobody knows it's there. There's these two little tufts of green fur where its eyes would have been, but you know, you have to go along with a magnifying glass to see that and even realize that this was even here. And it gets destroyed accidentally, totally accidentally. And again, you know, it's a neat story. I won't ruin it with a spoiler, but it's pretty neat how it all happens there. But there, it's something to be feared and hated. Whereas on Gaia, you know, all we did was took away the green fuzz of the eyes, and suddenly it's like this seems to be like this desirable thing. Pelorat abandons his interest in looking for the Earth and decides to stay there with this girl named Bliss, who's, well, very blissful or whatever. She's kind of different from everything else in some way that's not clear. They make a vague mention of Eternals, which even brings in yet another Isaac Asimov book called The End of Eternity, but she's not really an eternal in that sense, very much that I can see. But there's this hasty mention that kind of ties that in slightly, you know, or maybe she could be a robot with silent power. It's hard to tell, but she really kind of turns out to be kind of seemingly in some ways the master of that planet, even if the power behind the throne, if you will. It's not really a throne, but you know, it's people who seem to be on the planet and seem to be kind of in charge as people, but you know, she's kind of around and seems to be more who's running the show than anybody else. So Pelorat is so enraptured with her because, I don't know, he's met the perfect woman. So that's it. Treves, I'm all happy for you, Pelorat. I'll be here for a while. But I think this volume ends with him basically re-embarking on this whole thing, because by this time Treves is now also becoming interested in this big question of finding the planet Earth, where humanity first, you know, evolved, appeared, whatever, you know, where did humanity come from? In the meantime, of course, you have the second foundation and you have the first foundation all closing in on this world, and they're ready to try to blow it out of the sky. And of course, this world is able to deal with that situation, and all three go away kind of interestingly satisfied. And I won't, again, I can't get into any more detail without giving you spoilers, but that all goes on. And then after all, and Treves has this big decision to make that has a lot to do with what should the galaxy be like. Should it be just individual human beings doing their best with all the technology and knowledge and wisdom of the empire, original empire, and what they've built on it since then as the first foundation? Should they go with this rather mechanical but metallic ideas that truly implements all of Hari Seldon's psychohistory, which was the second alternative? Or should the whole galaxy become this giant sort of like Gaia world that spreads the whole galaxy wide. He has to make this choice. Suddenly, his ability to make a good choice gets called upon to make this momentous decision. And at the end of it all, he is the only one who sees all of what's really happening with all three sides and how they're affected by his decision. See. So, again, I can't go any further into the details without sharing spoilers, but it was a fun read. It brings in a lot of stuff, a little bit more vague than he would bring it in later on. It didn't really get much into robots. In fact, I'm not so sure it's clearly into that at all. But it did kind of mention Eternals, and it also mentioned, I like this example from the Misbegotten Missionary story. Well, I think that's what I have on Foundations